Bore da a chroeso. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to you to the launch of Social Leaders Cymru. We're here today to celebrate social leaders from all parts of Wales, and thank you so much for joining us. The event is an opportunity for you to connect with social leaders from all backgrounds who are leading with purpose, and hopefully you've already had the opportunity to have a chat with a few people who are on your tables, and there will be the opportunity to do more next. First, a little bit about how the programme is going to run this morning. We will be welcoming the First Minister to open proceedings. That's going to be in a few minutes' time. We will also hear from Derek Walker, CEO of Wales Co-operative Centre, and then Nadia Alomar, Director of SharedPurpose at Social. And that's going to be followed by a Q&A with our panel with a purpose. We're going to be hearing from Leon Ward, Menai Owen-Jones, Blevin Harris, Thamae and Vicky Roskams, and there will be an opportunity for you to put your questions to them. So do get thinking of those questions during the panel discussion, and you can pop them in a Q&A section on the screen, which will appear on the right of your screen. I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on that because we would love to put your questions to the panel later. So just a few notes before we begin. The event today is being recorded. If you're having any IT problems, we recommend that you use Google Chrome and do refresh your browser should you need to. But do feel free to ask any questions in the general chat. It's great to see that people are introducing themselves on there already. That's what it's all about. You can put information about yourselves in that general chat and share it. It's being monitored and Mike is on hand, so if there are any technical issues, please just do pop them in there as well, and hopefully we can get things sorted out for you. Another reminder of that Q&A panel that's there, and that's the place to put your questions to our panellists later on. A chroeso wrth gwrs I chi ofyn cwestiynau yn Gymraeg. You're very welcome to ask any questions in Welsh, and there will be a Welsh speaking table as well on the floor for you to mingle later. Should you wish to chat in Welsh, then please feel free to join that table later on. Whilst the speakers are on stage, your camera and mic will automatically turn off. So really all it remains for me to say in terms of notes is we want you to sit back and enjoy the morning and to take as much out of this event as you possibly can. Social Leaders Cymru is the first online skills and development programme to bring together the third sector from across Wales. It's brought to you by Social Leadership in partnership with the Wales Co-operative Centre. And congratulations to all of you who've already gained a place on the programmes. There will be many more funded events coming up for everyone to benefit from too. This programme has been designed to assist the recovery of the social sector from COVID-19 by enhancing resilience, strengthening communities and increasing the diversity of leaders. It's all about developing skills, capabilities and the leadership of individuals and organisations and creating a powerful framework of diverse third sector leaders who will inspire the next generation. The common theme here is that you are leading change and leading with a purpose for the benefit of all of the communities in Wales. So we're delighted that so many of you are here this morning. The First Minister of Wales, Mark Drakeford, is going to officially launch the event for us. And I would like to hand over now to Mark Drakeford so that we can hear him speak. Diolch yn fawr iawn i chi gyd.
Wel, bore da. Sian, diolch yn fawr am y cyflwyniad. Dwi'n ymwneud heidio am egl bach. Now, apologies for the short break before joining you, which was the usual technical sort of issues. But thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to be with you today. This is an important launch of Social Social Leaders Cymru. I want to begin, as I should, by thanking everybody on the call for your fantastic dedication and determination in helping to keep Wales safe and to help Wales to be ready to move beyond the very challenging pandemic period that we have all lived through together. I don't want to dwell on that this morning, because I think this morning is very much about looking forward beyond the pandemic, making sure that we are equipped to shape a future that draws on what seemed to me to be the enormous endorsement of basic cooperative principles in the way that we have managed to negotiate the pandemic. We really here in Wales have only succeeded to the extent we have because of the way in which we see people and organisations instinctively operate in ways that would be utterly familiar to people who are dedicated to the cooperative principles. Overcoming differences rapidly, sharing resources and ideas, pooling possibilities, and acting together for the common good. That really does seem to be one of the key messages of the last 18 months. And today is about how we capture all of that and put it to work in the future beyond the coronavirus crisis. The theme of the day then is leadership and the creation of social leaders for the future. And I wanted to offer you three Ds, three words beginning with D, as part of the prescription that I think lies at the heart of the programme that is being launched. The first, I think, is about the democratization of leadership. We continue to live, it seems to me, in a pretty desperately hierarchical society. And hierarchies are not there by accident. They exist for a purpose. They exist to hoard power and to retain it in the hands of the few rather than the many. Now, the cooperative movement has, in the 200 years since Robert Owen, worked very hard at democratization of ownership. When we own a cooperative, no matter how many shares, for example, we have one vote. Every member participates on that basis of equality. And the same spirit of democracy, the democratization of leadership, seems to me to be absolutely at the heart of what Social Leaders Cymru will be all about. My second D is one you heard Sian refer to already, and that is diversification of leadership. If we are to have the sort of leadership that we need and want here in Wales, then we absolutely cannot afford not to utilise the talents of every single member of our society. And we know that leadership has been dominated for a very long time by a certain slice of Welsh life. And what we need to be about is about making sure that we diversify our sense of leadership so that it draws on the participation, the commitment, and the talent of people who come from all sorts of backgrounds here in Wales. And that leads me then to my third D, and that is the notion of distributed leadership, an idea that I've banged the drum for a long time during the period that I've been in the Welsh government. Every single person who works in an organisation, anybody who is a volunteer that helps to make that set of possibilities real, is somebody with leadership capacity. And social leadership is about making sure that we understand that every single person has a leadership contribution to make and a leadership responsibility to discharge. One of the real dangers of hierarchical systems is not only that it hoards power in the hands of a few people, but that it teaches other people to hand responsibility always up the chain of command. And my idea of distributed leadership is that we should recognize the leadership potential and capacity that everybody has, and then say to them that when it comes to solving the problems that we face together in organizations, the way we do it is to ask ourselves first, what is the contribution that I can make to solving this problem? Not, who can I refer this problem to so that it becomes their problem to solve rather than mine? Now, of course, many problems that we see, we only have a fraction of a contribution to make. And then that fraction of a contribution gets added together with all the other contributions in a collaborative, collective, cooperative way that adds up to the solution that we then put into practice together. Now, I hope that during the crisis, the way that the Cabinet has operated here in the Welsh Government has shown some of these characteristics. In the most difficult days, when there were really challenging decisions to make, we made it by using those cooperative techniques. There were weeks when the Cabinet met every single day. We met in the morning, we met in the evening, we met on a Saturday and a Sunday, and we did it because we were trying to live out the ambitions of the cooperative movement to solve those problems by making sure that every single member and all the people that they spoke on behalf of had every opportunity to share ideas, to make those contributions to solving those difficulties, and then to do the difficult business of reaching those compromises around which conclusions inevitably cohere. So it is great to see that already 150 people are involved in Social Leaders Cymru, and as Sian said, the ambition is to create far more opportunities for people to come together, to share, to learn, and to create a leadership in the sector for the future that will deliver on that democratization, diversification, and distribution of leadership, so that we do indeed make sure that all those contributions from every single person, whatever part they play, that we capture the leadership potential they have and the contribution that releasing that potential makes to making solutions that work for the future of Wales. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd. Thank you all so much for what you will do today and for the way in which today will lead to that new and revived sense of social leadership here in our nation.
Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi, Mark Drakeford. Thank you very much, First Minister. It may be that we can actually bring Nadia up onto the stage, because I know also that she is here as well, as is Derek. So I'm going to see whether Nadia can join us while we're waiting to get Derek up onto the stage. Nadia, if you're able to pop on your camera and mic and join me up here. That's great, Nadia. We'll hand over to you now, and then we'll pop back to Derek later. Thanks so much.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sian. Hello, good morning. Bore da, everyone. So lovely to So lovely to be part of this event. So I'm Nadia Alomar. I am part of Social Leadership. We have partnered with the Wales Co-operative Centre on this wonderful programme that we're bringing to Wales. We're incredibly excited. It's been quite a long time in the making, so we are just absolutely over the moon that we were able to launch this year. Now, I will leave a lot of talking about the programme itself to Derek, because I'm sure that he would like to introduce it, and he's very eager to talk more about it. Now, as well as that programme, which we're very grateful to our steering group, obviously to the funders that we've worked with, the Garfield Weston Foundation and the Moondance Foundation, we're bringing together another element which we're super excited about. So what we've actually wanted to do is really bring some lasting culture change in the social sector in Wales. And we're incredibly pleased that we're able to do that in such an intensive and transformational way with the around 200 people that have already joined our programs. And congratulations to those who have started, and to those who are about to begin or will begin next year. It's going to be a really good ride. So I'm really excited for you. So apart from those people, we know that to create change, we really do need to reach more people and a more diverse audience. This goes really, really well, actually, with what Mark Drakeford was saying earlier. So I'm so pleased he mentioned some of these things about leadership, the 3Ds in particular: democratization, diversification, and distributing leadership, because that is really at the heart of what we're wanting to do with this Leadership Festival, which we'd like to bring to you. The Leadership Festival is in addition to the programs that we're running, and the festival is open to absolutely everyone who is involved in the social sector in Wales. It's going to be free events. We're going to incorporate things such as inspiring webinars, strands on specific leadership skills, business essential skills, and then one really exciting element, which is actually the speaker tents, where it's a bit like an open mic night, probably during the day, and we'll be asking people to contribute from all over, whether it's our participants, other people within the sector, our facilitators, our coaches. We'll be asking them to tell us more about their journey, to impart something that will help other people within the sector. So all of this information will be coming to you by email after this event. So please do sign up. Please do register your interest, and we'll be sending you more information. When we talk about leadership, we mean everyone. When we talk about leaders, it's all of you. That's what we really believe in at Social Leadership, and of course also our partners, the Wales Co-operative Centre. We've been delivering leadership development for over 10 years across the UK, and we believe everyone is a leader. We're all doing it every day in our own right, whether it's a meeting, a project, a team, an organisation. So you are all welcome to join us. It doesn't matter what size organisation you're from, whether you work by yourself as a freelancer, wherever you're based in Wales, and whatever your role. We would like to welcome all of you to the wider Leadership Festival. And as mentioned, you will get more information after this event in the email. So thank you very much, and I really hope you enjoy the rest of the event.
Thank you so much, Nadia. And great to hear it here about that Leadership Festival. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of interest in that, and people will be able to get that information. So at this stage, I'm delighted to say that we're going to move on to our panel discussion. We're going to be able to hear from Derek a little bit later in the programme. They are respected social leaders who can provide different perspectives on what it means to be a good leader. And we're delighted that they're here with us today. So I'll introduce them one by one so that they can make their way up to the stage during the introductions. Firstly, Leon Ward. Leon is the Programme Innovations Director at Future First, a national charity that works to build alumni networks in state secondary schools. He's also Deputy Chair of Brook and sits on board committees at the Children's Society and Refuge. And Leon graduated from the CLAW Emerging Leaders cohort in 2020. Great to see you, Leon. Thank you for joining me. Next, Menai Owen-Jones. Menai is Co-Vice Chair of Cardiff Met University, Trustee of Race Council Cymru and former CEO at the Pituitary Foundation National Health Charity. Menai is also a valued member of the Social Leaders Cymru steering group. Great to see you also on the stage, Menai. Croeso cynnes iawn I chi. Bore da. We will now say hello to Omilomo Thamae. It's great to have you with us as well, if you can make your way to the stage. Regional leader for Black Lives Matter Bangor, born and raised in apartheid South Africa before migrating to the UK with family. Omo has made links in BLM networks and he campaigns for anti-racist social change for a global community. He is also director of a photography and filmmaking production company. Great to see you, Omo. Croeso, welcome. Next, let's say hello to Victoria Roskams. After project managing extensive renovation work, Vicky opened the doors to Enbarr in 2015, a spacious recruitment and training facility that's 100% disability friendly. In 2017, the Enbarr Foundation was adopted as the model to best further Enbarr's social impact, and the focus really is to support the most vulnerable into employment, training and education and to reduce social isolation. Great to see you there, Vicky.
Morning.
Good morning. And finally to the stage, let's welcome Blevin Harris. Blevin is the founder and chair of LGBTQYMRU and has been recognised as one of Wales's most influential LGBTQ+ people for his voluntary work. That includes running Wales's first and fully bilingual LGBTQ+ magazine, as well as supporting schools and businesses to becoming fully inclusive. So we really have got a great panel with us this morning. Just to remind you all in the audience, you can put your questions to the panel later by writing them in the Q&A column, which is to the right of your screen. But I'm going to start things off, just get the discussion going really with a few questions. And also, audience, just to keep you on your toes, to let you know at this stage that following our panel discussion in about 40 minutes time, we're going to be posing a question to you, the audience, that we want you to have a think about. But we're going to give you that question after you've heard the panellists. So, croeso cynnes iawn unwaith eto I chi gyd. Warm welcome to you panellists. Just to get things going, I suppose, I'd like to know what leadership means to you. As an opener, if each of you could give me a few thoughts about what leadership means to you. Obviously, we can expand the conversation later, but it would just be great to get a couple of thoughts from you all at this stage. As I'm seeing Leon there right next to me and how it's set out. So I'll go to you first, Leon, if that's okay. What does leadership mean to you?
Sure. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Sian, and bore da pawb. It's a big question, and you know, you can go on a rant and give a really kind of high level pie in the sky kind of answer to this. But I think leadership's really simple. It's about taking something you believe in and fighting for it. And I think that happens at all sorts of levels, right at a community level, and right up to a sort of national level, as Mark Drakeford was talking about. And I think to democratise leadership in the way that Mark is talking about really brings my point to fruit, because leadership doesn't have to be about a big political issue. That belief in something or finding that issue that you care about can be something in your own household. People lead families, they lead their sibling packs, they lead their friendship groups, they lead in school, they lead in all different ways. So leadership is about, I think, stepping up to the plate, finding something you believe in and fighting for it, no matter what that issue is, no matter how big or small that issue is, because something that I consider small, someone else might consider absolutely major in their life, and vice versa.
Great start. Thanks, Leon. Menai, can I ask you that same question, please? What is leadership to you?
Diolch, Sian. Good morning, everyone. I think for me, leadership is fundamentally about people. I think it's about building relationships, and people choose to follow you as a leader. And I think that word choose and choice is critical. And I think it is about influencing other people and to drive that kind of change that you're looking for, that Leon talked about, and that you work together towards that common purpose. So I think really it is about the choice, the relationships, and working together, you know, collaboratively towards a common goal.
Great, thank you. Omo, I'd love to get some opening thoughts from you.
Thank you, Sian, and good morning, everyone. So I think our speakers have already touched on a lot of the core of really what leadership is. So I'll just bring in a different approach. To me, one of the things I was told from young was, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, take someone with you. And that essentially boils down what this leadership can be in terms of whatever goal you have. You are much more likely to get there if you take people with you, because of the belief that they will have and the support that you'll get. And I believe part of leadership is actually letting people who are better at other aspects take over those aspects. So, you know, there is a lot wrapped up in leadership, just to go over a couple of points there.
Thank you very much. And, oh, sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
Oh, no, I was done. That's all I was saying.
We will be coming back to you for further thoughts, though. You're not let off the hook yet. I was actually just going to pick up with something you directly said with Vicky, because taking people with you, Vicky, is what you do, because I do know a little bit about your organisation from meeting you in the past. And how important is that to you in leadership?
I hate the word leadership because it says everything to you. It says that someone's in the lead. So that's why if you ever see my title, I always call myself an engagement manager, because all I think I do is manage a process, and I work with others to empower them, to uncover hidden talents and help them bloom and become the managers of tomorrow. Because just what Omo's just said, you know, if you want to go fast, go on your own. But if you want to make a great contribution to the future, do it collaboratively. And no one's ever in competition, because we've all got something different to offer. And just because I say something, does something some way, someone else will say, you know, but have you thought about this? And it's opening up those challenges. And it's something that Mark Drakeford hit on, which is get people's mindset to think, what can I contribute to make that change? And I think that's the difference. And that's what we have to empower people to do. Even with climate change, we have to say to them, these things are happening. How do you think we can improve them? Get people to develop the solution with you. And I think that's what not leadership, but management is about.
Thank you, Vicky. Blevin, would you use the word leader? What does leadership mean to you?
I don't think there's anything that I could say that could enrich any further what's already been said, to be entirely honest. I'm very fortunate to have come last with this question. I think it boils down to
you're leading. I was just going to say, Blevin, you are leading.
In some ways, but I think
it'd be lovely to tell us a bit about it.
For me, it boils down to two things I said already, and that is people. Someone who has arrived at a response to an issue, and is then working towards that purpose, but is also bringing people along with them. I very much know that Vicky is with what Omo was saying in regards to bringing people who want to go far, and I'm particularly passionate about that. And to me, a leader is someone who can encapsulate that. You know, I don't necessarily think, you know, there's something wrong, like a leader's born or developed. As I've said, I think it's a response to perceived issue. But I do think that there's inevitably times where you have to refine skills like your discipline to make sure that you can patience and bring on that journey. So purpose and people are the two main things for leadership in my eyes.
Thank you, Blevin. And interesting, you said you don't think that leaders are born. If I can ask you, just following on from your thoughts there, then, you know, how do you get inspired? How did you learn your leadership in terms of what you're doing? It would be interesting to have a little bit of your story with that.
Of course, thank you. So I don't necessarily think that it's that you're born leaders. I think it's a response to something, to an inequality, to a systemic issue. Deserves better, and that's where you find your purpose, then your vision, your and to echo what I said again, I think inevitably you find yourselves in situations where if you want to continue along that journey and you want to make that purposeful change, you have to refine some of the skills that would come along with that. You know, your communication, your engagement with people, so that you arrive there together. You know, it's not this marathon effect that you're already there. You've already come to terms with what would be your personal stages. You do that with people along the way. It's an iterative process. I've always been quite chopsy, to be honest. I've always had a firm sense of what I believe, and I've always had the confidence. I suffer a lot with I live with imposter syndrome, which I imagine would have come up here, and I think a lot of the leaders that I know do as well. So I've always been able to stand up and perceptions and my views on things, and I've been very, very lucky, particularly in the capacity that I have as chair as LGBTQYMRU, that people have aligned with those views and wanted to come along with me, so that it's no longer my perspective or issue. Lead on that together.
Thank you, Bleddyn. Menai, you were nodding there. If we can bring you in, and what are your thoughts about leaders, how it happens, born or made?
Absolutely made, not born. I think born kind of perpetuates the kind of perception that leadership is exclusive. I think we can all learn to be leaders, and I think your personal and professional experience, so your whole life experience, builds you as a leader. I think, as Blevin said, it is a process. Every day we learn. And I think for me, my life experience has developed me as a leader. So losing my dad when I was a teenager, coming out as gay, being a parent, all these different life experiences give you resilience, courage, help you to prioritize. So those are some of the skills that you need as a leader. And then in terms of like a professional work as well, being chief executive at the age of 30 really kind of taught me to hit the ground running and learn while I was doing. But also it's important about working with people, different people. Surround yourself with volunteers, volunteer yourself with beneficiaries, and really kind of learn and listen and engage with different people. So I think every day we learn, and I think, you know, as leaders, it's about being open-minded and growing with people around us, and it's a continuing evolving process.
Thank you. Leon, where did you learn your leadership?
Yeah, I think the first thing to say is I definitely think leadership is something that's learned. I do think, though, that it would be amiss not to acknowledge that some people are born into opportunities and networks that much easier chances and opportunities to lead, if we think that leadership is all about the big picture stuff that I spoke about earlier, you know, about big social and political change. It's clearly a lot harder for someone from a council estate up in the northeast of England, which is where I grow from, to kind of, you know, be in the corridors of power as it is to someone that goes to school with all their mates who currently serve in the current cabinet. I mean, we have to acknowledge that there is a leadership pathway that some people are born into. Having said all of that, I think, and major shout out to anybody that works in the youth sector or in the education sector, because if it wasn't for my teachers and youth workers, I'm not sure I would have gone on the path that I went on. I mean, it was about them showing me what I could potentially do and putting opportunities in front of me that I wouldn't have gotten otherwise. And I think the other bit of leadership, which everybody has pulled out here, is actually whatever opportunities you come across that might be suitable for another person, you should put in front of them, even if they're not suitable for it, because the likelihood is they probably are, even if they don't recognize it themselves, not least because, as the chat is showing, and as Bleddyn really perfectly articulated that about imposter syndrome, I think every leader, in whatever circumstance, at some point gets imposter syndrome, even if that is, like I said earlier, about leading your household. There are times your parents always talk about how they feel like they didn't know what they were doing at the first time, they didn't feel like it was right for them, etc. So I think what I'm trying to get at here is that imposter syndrome is universal. Leadership is something that you learn, but we should acknowledge that there is a pathway of privilege that you can in this country, and Mark Drakeford, said it in his speech too. And I think it is important to acknowledge that, because those leaders that are made have to try and navigate within that as well, and that of course adds a level of complexity to it.
Thank you, Leon. Omo, can I ask you about your learning, your pathway, your journey, your story to leadership?
Absolutely. So I will echo what everybody else has said in terms of it's definitely something that you learn in terms of leadership. It's not something that you can completely be born into, as well as echoing again what Leon said about the privilege that you can have, which will facilitate your path into leadership. Depending on, of course, your definition, there is always going to be privilege, and it's going to be more difficult. There's going to be obstruction for other people. So in terms of my path, I feel like that also depends again on the definition that you use. I did athletics for a long time, and I feel like a lot of the principles that I picked up from leading a team, playing basketball, playing football, was has translated into one, a corporate career, and then two, like kind of a company director. So there is leadership in that kind of terms, but there is of course leadership on the social factors which we're talking about, which relates to race. And I feel like those positions have honestly come out of default in a way. In a lot of places, I was essentially a token in one place, and that essentially put me in the position where no one else could take on any kind of racial lead, and that left me in the position whereas either I didn't take it on and nothing would get done, or I took it on and just kind of evolved with the position, if that makes sense. So I feel like that's essentially boiled down. That's essentially me boiling down what my entry into the leadership position of a kind of with a social agenda has been.
Thank you very much. And Vicky, coming to you on this one, it would be great if you could share a bit about your leadership journey and how things have evolved and developed for you. I know you don't like using the word leader, so I might say management journey to you.
I actually agree with some of the things that each one of the panelists has said, especially with Menai, that it's life experiences. But then again, with what Leon said, it doesn't actually matter. I know on some of the parliamentary leadership stances, it is usually what school you've been to, where you've been. But then again, I've also met some other great people that haven't had that journey and they're MPs. So it's how they've related to people and how they've basically used the negativities in their life as stepping stones, as platforms to move them forward, and then use those experiences and shared with others. because I know one of the things that Sian brought up at the beginning was my disabilities. I never go to someone and go, hi, I'm disabled and I'm a leader. Because one of the greatest things for me to do was in 2012, I got to go to the Paralympics with the team. And, you know, when I got round all those people, not one of them mentioned they had the greatest jokes, like being legless and everything like that, but they could say it. And it's that type of thing, and how to use humour and bring people along with the journey with you. But they are the superhumans, and they are the people that made me look. And I went walking down Alderhay one day, volunteering on a children's ward, and realised how thankful I was. And I think that's why I can help empathise with people when they are going through bad times. I'll say to them, look, have you ever been to here? I understand what you're going through. And I think I use my past as empowerment for others. And I think that's what I try and do through my life.
Thank you so much, Vicky, for sharing that with us as well. It's great to be building up a picture, I think, around the panelists today, to hear your personal journeys and stories, as well as the wider thoughts, is really important for the audience. And thank you very much for sharing them. We really appreciate it. If we look at social sector, social leadership, it would be great to have some of your thoughts about that. I mean, is it different? I mean, you've touched on political leadership. We also know sport leadership. We've heard about. Is leadership in the social sector different? I don't mind perhaps who'd like to pick up on it. You can just raise your hands visually. It would be great to have a discussion going on that. Vicky just jumped in there first, Menai, and then to you.
I think what people forget is it's called social enterprise. So what they've got to think is it's an enterprise, commercial, with a social impact. And I think that's what a lot of people forget when they work in the social. It's the social impact and the good that you're doing that gives the sustainability. And I think if you bring people along on the journey with you, you will create that sustainability, but you've still got to do an enterprise in the background to make sure that you keep those people supported. So I think that's sometimes what gets lost in translation. And I think sometimes you have to be a little bit of a disruptor and just turn around and say to people, look, you may have a commercial organisation, but what good are you actually doing? And it's raising the issues within these commercial organisations and saying to them, you have a mission statement, but what actually do you do? And asking these critical questions.
Thank you, Vicky. Men, I'll come to you next.
Thank you, Sian. I think really, if you look at different sectors, there are different challenges that we all face. So I think if you look at the social sector, we have multifaceted challenges, really. I mean, if you look at charities, we have the funding relying on donations, for example. We have a breadth of stakeholders, and we have those really intractable societal problems that we as organisations are trying to tackle and challenge and deal with. So I think leadership is different in that sense. I think also that we are held to higher account as social sector leaders than maybe other sector leaders. We should be seen in our, leading with our values. But saying that, I think as sector leaders, we should be working across sectors and learning from different sectors, different leadership styles from each other. So there's more kind of collaboration, because obviously together, that's how we will tackle societal issues across sectors, not in silos individually.
Thank you, Menai. Leon, yes.
I think Menai's absolutely right with the closing point there. I mean, I think she was right for the whole of what she said, but just a bit on the closing point around learning from other sectors. There is a risk in the social sector, whether you're a registered charity, social enterprise, community interest company, whatever it is, that you sometimes get blinded by the halo effect of working in the social sector, which is we do good, therefore everything we do is good. And that isn't always the case. There is bad practice in every sector, and there is bad practice in every organisation. And sometimes the private sector or the non-social sectors and the public sector, any of the kind of sectors that aren't classed as, the third sector, as it were, have done some good in some areas of professional life that we could copy and paste into our sector. There is an element of protectiveness that sometimes comes with the social sector. I think to Menai's point, that actually sometimes leaning out of that comfort zone and leaning into what we might see as, the for-profit and the dirty sectors, as it were. I don't think that. Some people do, but it's critical to remember that just because we do good, it doesn't mean everything we do is good. There are challenges that we have to face in our leadership roles.
Thank you, Leon. Would anybody else like to come in, Bleddyn or Omo, on that about social leadership and how it's different to other forms? Or otherwise, I wanted to ask you. Yes, Omo, great.
Sure. Sorry, Sean. Let me give it a quick 20 seconds. I think the leaders that have already spoken may have honestly already said everything. I'm just trying to round it up. In terms of enterprise and sustainability, I do think that is one of the most important parts in terms of making a lasting change, especially. All of us don't want the work that we're doing to stop if we stop, essentially. The things with sustainability, and I think Menai already touched on cross-sector and just making sure that we are not just focused and siloed on the stuff that we are most familiar with, but trying to work with people in sectors that we aren't as familiar with, and that's the only way that we also amplify our impact. And then the next thing was just making sure that our work is also intersectional. So we've got LGBTQ included, we've got racial aspects that are considered, we've got gender included, age, and so on and so forth. That way, that's the only way that you can make social change that affects the entire population, rather than, like we said, staying in a silo and talking staying in your echo chamber, essentially. Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Thank you so much, Omo. Actually, Vicky, if I can pick up with you on that.
Social leadership, if there was anything you wanted to add in, but also to pick up on what Omo was saying
about sustainability, and perhaps you could comment a little bit about, how you think things do need to change over time.
I think there's a lot, like Menai said, about grants and everything. You do need grants in the beginning, but what you need to do is work with people, like both Mark Drakeford and myself and others have said, to empower them to think differently. Go to organisations and say, right, you're making these profits, you give to charities. What do you get from that charity? Where does your money go? Give them value for what they're investing in, even if it's a charity or a social enterprise. Some of them say in my mission statement, well, we'll go and give £30 to the local, or £300 to the local hospice. What do you get for that hospice? And see a result at the end of it, and try and get them thinking more about volunteering or gifting products and services to help make your product or your impact harder. And then also what we need to look at is, in these times, especially after COVID, go to some of these organisations, these food organisations that have excess food, and say to them, what are you doing with your excess food? Is there a solution we can work with other social enterprises with and give back to people in need? It's using out of the box, solutions, and getting people to think on a wider scale. And I loved what Omo said about having everybody involved, but I haven't actually take it another way. I don't have a barrier. I try not to put labels on things or people, which is what has made it a little bit more inclusive on our project, because a lot more people will come, young people, it doesn't matter what backgrounds they are, who they are. We had a festival, and when I brought a lovely drag queen along, who's one of my best mates, she was sitting down and talking to all the kids, and it's educating them at a young age, that this is normal practice, and this person's a human being, and you should respect it. And then there's another gentleman called Mark Williams that has a company called Limart. He's absolutely fantastic, and he does things, around legs and covers, and it's just educating people what's out there. And I think that's what we need to do. We may have our own projects, but it's working together collaboratively to improve the impact for the area.
Thank you, Vicky. I mean, can I ask you, Blevin, what you find perhaps the most inspiring yourself? I mean, is there a leadership style or action that you find very inspiring, that you've taken anything from along your journey and along the way?
And in regards to like the social sector, I guess I'm still kind of in my infancy with it, really, in regards to what we've defined here and determined to be leadership. So what I can align my answer to is what we do with LGBTQYMRU. And just to come on to what people have said there, so I had in the public sector and in the social sector, and I do personally find that there is. I think the core principles that underpin leadership are the same. However, what I do find is with people are there because they have to, because they have to be there, it's their job, and then LGBT is all volunteer led. So those people are there because they want to be there, and I think that requires, well, it certainly developed a different style of leadership within me. The leadership behavior, the style that I think you asked me, which resonates most with me, is integrity. I think it's really important, integrity. To be honest, what is to do what is right, even when sometimes people disagree with it, but also that people can have this trust in you, that you recognize and reward what it is people are doing with you, whilst also being able to admit and be something wrong. And I think that makes you far more human. And in what I'm LGBTQYMRU, people appreciate that, because we're all there because we want to be there and we have the same vision and we want to make a real good difference. And it's difficult to do that if you feel like you're being line managed instead of being led, or that you're the other instead of part of the collective. For me, integrity is also about doing it with people, not doing it to people.
Bleddyn, thank you. Menai, perhaps you're a little bit further down the journey, if I can put it in terms of leadership. Bleddyn was talking about sort of starting off. I mean, what would you say you found sort of most in terms of behaviour that
come across?
I'll have to say, I actually wrote down leadership integrity as my kind of most inspiring attribute as well. And I think it just shows how fundamental it is. I think if you don't have integrity, you can't really build on anything else. You need integrity to build trust, and trust builds relationships. And as we already talked about this morning, that's critical really in terms of leadership. But I think it is as well, your actions speak louder than words. So I think it's very much following through on what you said you will. And I think that goes across, for all leaders really. But I think it does start with integrity, doing the right thing even when nobody's looking. And that's what I try and do. Those are, if I think of the leaders that inspire me most, integrity, that they all have integrity at their heart.
Thank you, Menai. I mean, Leon, you were nodding there. Perhaps to be good to have a thought from you on this, but also, I suppose, great if you've got any tips for our audience out there as well to share with them today.
Yeah, the reason I was nodding around the integrity bit is sometimes leadership means you have to clash with people that you really, really like, who you really rate, who you really respect. And it's about having those clashes in the open air in a way that isn't personal. I think they say in school, challenge the statement, not the person. And that can be really hard at times when you're so close to things and you're so close to people and you just think, why is this person trying to block something I want to do? Like, let me just do it, please. Actually understanding that most people who attach themselves to an idea or a principle or to a position do so because, you know, they're acting with integrity. There is a reason. You have to understand that reason and unpick it. And it just, sometimes people think there is a conundrum between being acting with integrity and being challenging and, you know, coming up against people who you really rate and respect. I think some tips in terms of just generic leadership. I think the thing that Mark said that really resonated to me is the democratization of it. I think the way that you open the pathways to leadership is you show people not how to do it, because there isn't a right or way of doing it. It's a craft. I think it's an art. You know, you work on leadership all the time. Like Menai said earlier, you're learning every day about how to do it. But I think some really simple things you can do is, in the workplace in particular, doing things like lunch and learns, mentoring, buddying up, sponsoring people through actual formal leadership training if they want that, giving them a coach where necessary, championing them at the times when they can't champion themselves or won't champion themselves. I think it's about pushing uncomfortable opportunities in front of people. They won't see it as an opportunity, of course, they'll see it as a challenge, but then once they've done it and cracked it, then they'll think, oh, well, that was a great opportunity. It's quite interesting actually how people's language changes when they've won on something. And I think it's about really listening to your team, but also letting them listen to you and hear from you about your experiences. And whilst I don't think we should go down, you know, the route of the kind of identity culture that we are at risk of sometimes doing, I do think it is important to wear things that make you different on your sleeve and to talk about it and to talk about, you know, any of the challenges that you face because of something you hold either as a protected or non-protected characteristic, you know, whether that's because you're gay or disabled or you're a person of color or because you grew up in a really poor background, whatever it is, people resonate with those stories. So sharing those stories, I think, is important, whilst also not trying to go down the rabbit hole of, you know, the only reason I'm engaged is because I'm gay, black and disabled or whatever. It's about talking about those issues in a way that allows people to resonate and understand that and recognize themselves in other leaders in the field. And that would be my final point, really, is recognizing you're not the only leader in the world. There are others that you can bring in. So we have a schedule at Future First where we bring in other social leaders to come and talk to our staff and team about their experiences.
Thank you, Leon. Omo, are there any thoughts or tips that you'd like to share with the audience at this stage? We've just got a few more minutes left on the panel discussion now before I bring in the audience questions. And it's great to see, audience, that you are putting the questions in the Q&A. We have some to get going on, but I'd just like to wrap it up on these final thoughts that we've had from Leon, Bleddyn and Menai so far. So to come to Omo and Vicky for some final thoughts, if that's okay.
Sure. I might be stealing Vicky's thunder a little bit. It's one of the things that she already mentioned in terms of like the underlying reason why she doesn't like the label of a leader. Basically, to me, it is moving away from a hierarchy and more to a heterarchy. That's actually a concept that I was fairly recently familiarized with, but just the point that not everything has to have some kind of chain of command where there is one ultimate person who makes decisions and then they just speak down else. There is a model essentially where people can have more say in how society is actually shaped and what we do, what's acceptable, and it's about tending towards that. I think that's a very abstract one, so I'm just gonna keep it moving for now, I think, and then we'll see what the Q&A is.
Oh, well, thank you, Vicky. A tip for you from you to the audience just before we go to the questions.
I basically, the one that everyone's gone on about in here is collaboration. And know your why. Why you're doing this, why, and don't deviate from it, because I've seen recently some other organisations, as soon as COVID happened, it's like, oh, what grant funding can we go after? Let's forget our why and let's go after that grant funding. But they haven't remembered why they got into this, why they're doing what they're doing, and then people get left by the side of the road because they're the people they were doing it for in the first place. And it's not always about chasing the funding. If you stay true and work hard to your mission and supporting people, it will come right. And that's what gains your sustainability. And that's what people need to do going forward, is group together, know what other people's, look at the people in this panel. You know, I'm going to reach out to each one of these going forward because they've all got great attributes. We all don't have the answer, and collaborate, integrity, trust and respect. And that's where I'll end.
Thank you, Vicky. Well, we've had some lovely comments already in the chat box about all of you on the panel and what a great panel you are. So thank you very much. You know, people are really appreciating you sharing your stories and the journeys that you've been on as well. So I'm going to open it now to the audience questions, and I'm going to start with one from Natasha Davis. There were 4 votes for this, so it was the most popular question posed by the audience. Do the panel think that we value diversity of leadership styles and authenticity enough? How comfortable are we with leaders who want to disrupt the status quo? So who would like to take that one, or to start with it? About diversity of leadership, are the styles and authenticity? Menai, thank you.
Thank you, Sian. No, I don't think we value diversity of thought of backgrounds enough. I think this is an area for the social sector and other sectors to really improve upon. I think if we look at board roles and senior leadership roles, there's still a great lack of diversity of people, disabled people, people from ethnic minority backgrounds, so people in really senior roles. So I think there's definitely a movement, but we as leaders, all of us here today, need to push forward on championing diversity and inclusion in everyday life, anywhere and everywhere that we can. So I absolutely think that this is integral to the future leadership of the social sector.
And also Natasha's question, it was how far do we value diversity of leadership styles and authenticity? Is it enough? And how comfortable are we with leaders who want to disrupt the status quo? Leon, would you like to pick up on that one?
Sure. Question. I think how comfortable are we with leaders who want to disrupt the status quo? I think it depends how much you benefit from the status quo, to be honest. If you benefit from it quite a lot, then you're unlikely to want it to change. Now, there is a slight dilemma in that the status quo might serve you well at the moment, but there could be a whole range of issues and challenges you fought to get to that position. And so there's in my mind just a little bit of a clash there. It'd be really interesting, perhaps not in this form, but in a different, to discuss that over coffee, Natasha, if you're available. I reckon that would make for a great debate. But typically, I don't think people are open to disrupting status quo too much, not least because sometimes that's uncomfortable for people who have started to understand the status quo and started to navigate it and started to build their own leadership within that. To then change that and rock that can cause the foundations of that person's leadership to crumble away. And I think the two points marry up really, which is if you present with lots of disadvantage and lots of issues that you've fought with to get to your position, and then suddenly you get to that position, everything you know about that world starts to fall away, then what happens? Having said that, of course, there is room, I think, certainly in my life, for people who do things completely differently to me. And I try to think of myself as somebody that's quite open to learning from other people and learning from other styles. But it is uncomfortable. And, when the Black Lives Matter movement started to kick off, I think that is when most people in the social sector kind of paused for a moment and thought, actually, this is really uncomfortable. We kind of have spoken about race equality for a long time, but actually that was a gear shift, I think, in attitudes and understanding and discussions, and being able to, as a white individual that has done some interesting things in his career, to be able to acknowledge the privilege I come with, and that I will never be able to, completely understand the experiences of people of colour who have done that. the reason I want to bring that up is because it seems to have fettered away ever so slightly. You know, all the attention has drifted away. And I think that was extremely uncomfortable for us, because it showed those of us that were benefiting from the status quo at the time just how we were benefiting. So I think it's a real complex thing to unpack, but there's a couple of thoughts that I hope are useful.
Leon, thank you. And as you talk, would any of the other panelists like to comment on that one? Because lots of other questions are coming through. One that's just jumped to the top is, what advice would you give to the participants just starting out on the Social Leaders Cymru programme? Now, I don't know, is it just you, Leon, who would be able to comment on that one? Or would anybody else feel able to give advice to participants just starting out on the Social Leaders Cymru programme? Yeah, Bleddyn?
Yeah, I don't mind coming on this one, actually. The advice that I would give is, it was a question that my current, someone who I consider to be a leader, asked me when I was facing these types of issues around leadership and getting stuff done. So my advice would be, for anyone who's about to start on this journey, is to ask basis, what matters more, that it gets done, or that you were the one seen doing it? That has massively changed my approach to leadership and how I seek to get things done with people. That question will stay with me forever now. What matters more, that it gets done, or that I'm the one seen doing it?
Thank you, Blevin. Omo, I'd like to come to you. I mean, there's a question here I'd like to ask as Lisa Roberts, the panel, who are or were the leaders that inspired you and why? Was there a particular leader that inspired you, Omo?
I've had leaders inspiring me since from young. Honestly, it depends on which age gap you're kind of talking to me about. Honestly speaking, one of the people who did a lot for me was my basketball coach. I've mentioned sports before, but the way in which we were taught principles that have no real place being taught on a basketball court. We learn about physical principles, like in terms of principles of physics and society. And we had a lot of real deep conversations that had no real or no surface relationship to basketball. So I would definitely put people like that in. But of course, when we talk about social change, there are people like David Olusoga who are who are campaigning basically through their documentaries and through their social their social contributions are going along kind of social media and media in general, creating those kinds of things, people like Akala. So I've dropped a couple of names in because I can see we've got 10 seconds left. I'm not sure if you want to take over, Sian.
That's okay. I'm glad you're keeping an eye on the timings. You're very conscientious. So thank you for making my
panel. More questions were coming in, but as you say,
our time is just coming to a conclusion on what we can share at the moment. But of course, the conversations can continue because there is going to be networking at the end. But I did want to just thank you all so much for being absolutely brilliant panelists today, for sharing so much with us, being open to all the questions from the audience as well. And it's lovely to see that people are clapping. The interaction is happening in the chat as we speak. But panelists, I'm going to thank you and ask you to kindly leave the stage for the moment, because I want to bring on now Quentin Thomas from the Wales Co-operative Centre. We had been hoping to hear from Derek earlier, but Gwen is here now and she can just give a couple of those key messages that I know that Derek was keen to share. Thanks so much, Gwen.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Sian. And diolch yn fawr iawn i'r panel. Thank you very much to the panel this morning. I'd like to personally thank Omo, Leon, Menai, Blevin and Vicky. And in my eyes, you are all positive disruptors. and I've been following your work online, and it's been an absolute honour to have you with us today, sharing your experience and sharing your insight into social leaders. And I think the things that I've picked up today, it's all about choice, Blevin, I do agree, and you're all making a choice, and that's why you're here today. And what I've picked up as well today is about social change. It's about making a difference. It's about that social value and social impact. And I'd like to thank the First Minister, Mark Drakeford, as well, for joining us live. And that was a real treat this morning. Apologies that Derek can't quite join us immediately, but he is hoping to join just before the session ends today. So I will just move on quickly just to talk about the programme. And it's been a fantastic collaboration between the Wales Co-operative Centre and Social. And it's been fantastic to welcome the programme to Wales this year. We launched in June and we have 6 streams available. And congratulations to those of you who have already had a place on Emerging Leaders Cymru, Experienced Leaders Cymru, New Managers, Board Leaders, Digital Leaders, and of course we've got Community Leaders Cymru yet to open. So hopefully that will be a bit of news that we'll be able to share with you, so you can pass on to your colleagues and your fellow community leaders as well. There will be another cohort as well of digital leaders opening before the end of the year, so please do keep an eye out for that. But of course, all of this is made possible because of our funders. And we'd like to thank Moondance Foundation and Garfield Western Foundation for making the programme possible, and of course the event today. So I'd like to thank Sian Lloyd for being a fantastic host as well, and for Nadia from Social for sharing information with us today about the festival and all the free events that are coming up shortly. So we'll be in touch by email and we'll be able to let you know what's coming up shortly. But today has all been about celebrating, and it's all been about collaboration. And today is about connecting social leaders from across Wales, from all backgrounds. So once again, I'd like to thank the panel for sharing their experience and their knowledge and wisdom with us today. So diolch yn fawr iawn I chi am heddiw. I will pass it back to Sian Lloyd now, and I think she's going to present a question for you all to discuss on your tables. So please feel free to enjoy the networking, and we will keep it open for as long as you'd like to chat to us. Mae 'na bwrdd Cymraeg I gael hefyd, mae croeso chi ymuno ni. There's a Welsh table, and I will jump on there if anybody would like to have a chat. Diolch yn fawr iawn, Sian.
Leanne. Yes, the question that we want to pose to you, the audience, to get you thinking about is what you think the mindset of the social sector, of leadership in the social sector should be. And we heard some great thoughts from the panelists, but it would be wonderful to have your thoughts as the audience today, who've been taking part through the chat throughout really, but to get your thoughts on that specific question about what do you think the mindset of leadership in the social sector should be going forward. You can go back to your tables to discuss this over a sort of period of 5 to 10 minutes. And then if we could ask you to summarise your thoughts, perhaps one person from the table, take responsibility for that table, put the table number and a few lines of what your discussion has been around that. And then we can share that at the end. There will be people from Social and Wales Co-operative Centre there on the tables as well. So this is an opportunity for you to have a chat about this particular question. And then obviously there's more time at the end for further networking as well. So I will leave you at this stage for you to return to the wider table plan, to have those chats around your tables. And I know that there were further questions to the panelists, and if they're around on the tables, I'm sure that they would be happy to discuss those. So I'll leave you at this stage, and we'll be back with you to feedback on your thoughts a little bit later on. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. I hope you've enjoyed the conversation so far. The question that we posed to you was, what do you think the mindset of leadership in the social sector needs to be going forward? It would be great if a few of you could just jot a couple of thoughts in that general chat column for us to reflect. We've got a little bit of time for you to do that now, because I'm delighted to welcome to the stage Derek Walker, CEO of Wales Co-operative Centre. Derek, come and join me. It's lovely to see you. Obviously, we've heard quite a few key themes running through today. And the question that we were wanting to ask the audience and get a few further thoughts was looking to the future and what leadership in the sector should look like and what they would like it to look like. It would be great to have your thoughts on that actually at this stage as well.
Yeah, thank you, Sian, and sorry about the technical hitch earlier on. I'm afraid it was probably user error, but we fixed it now. Yeah, I heard some of the conversations and I thought the panel was really excellent. I mean, my thoughts align to what Vicky said, actually, and we need to be clear about the why and what we're here to do. And if we remain focused on the why, then the rest falls into place. Colleagues and others shared with me a great TED talk that I'd not seen and millions of others have seen by a guy called Simon Sinek. And I really was struck by that because it talks about how organizations should really focus on the why. Perhaps that TED talk is more about the marketing, but it's also about, you know, the direction and being clear about why you're there and what you're there to do. And I think those organizations that responded to the crisis really effectively were those that didn't worry about, you know, perhaps where the funding was going to come first of all. They focused on what they were there to do and who they were there to support, who were their customers, their clients, their community, and then the rest fell into place. The other thing that I would pick out that has always been important to me as a leader is this idea of a distributed leader that the First Minister talked about. When I first, I guess we're always leading at different times, but when I came into a leadership position at the Wales Co-operative Centre, I first thought, you know, everything comes to me and I've got to think about everything and have the response to everything. And well, that's an impossible situation to be in. No one can be in that situation. So the best decisions are those made collectively, where people feel empowered to take decisions, can able to contribute to decisions, have ownership for those decisions. And I've, you know, learned the hard way that that is a far better way to run an organization and to take decisions in a community. So distributed leadership, I think, is very important for the sector going forward.
Derek, thank you. And we're having some comments coming through. Blevin, actually, who was on our panel, was on table 12, and he said that they had a conversation around how organisations' leadership frameworks don't necessarily reflect the organisational outputs, and that sometimes there needs to be some more ambitious societies in which we serve, but maybe the tide is changing. Sorry, it just flicked as I was reading it, Bleddyn, there. We also went on to reflect on the question around diversity of skills and leadership styles. And I think a shared sentiment, although I didn't quite finish it, was that we need to do more to encourage more diversity of people, thought, approach and styles. We also had some feedback from table 9, Natasha Davis, some key words and phrases from us: bold, collaborative, challenge the idea of what leadership is, what it looks like, be ambitious for change as well. Mike had put some information on there to Kelly. So a number of different conversations going on. I know a few people, just picking up from the chat, had struggled a little bit, had a few technical issues, and perhaps particularly around the tables. It was a case of double clicking, I know, to get on the tables, but some people have said they had some problems with the sound and weren't able to necessarily hear people. So obviously apologies for that. And a few people have had to leave as well. So thank you for the comments around that question. And I know that people obviously from Wales Co-operative Centre and also from CLAW will be able to those comments and take those thoughts going forward as well. I'm sure they're going to be very useful, Derek, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to be really useful. We're at the foothills of developing this leadership program, and we want it to be here for the long term. So we're going to be taking feedback, hearing what people say, understanding what continues to be the needs for the third sector in Wales, and developing from there. So we'll continue to listen and learn. You know, I very much welcome all those comments that people have made. We really are about diversity. One of the fundamental things of this programme is to bring together people from different backgrounds, working in different sectors and different contexts, to support their journey in the social sector, to come into employment within the social sector, to come into volunteering within the social sector, and to make it to the top if they choose to do so. So we're really focused on the diversity point. So I'm glad that that's come through so clearly today in the contributions and in the chat.
Derek, thank you so much. Great to have that chat with you and for you to give those final thoughts as well. Just remains for me to let everybody know networking left. You can move around the tables by double clicking, turning your mic and camera on. So to move around the tables, you need to double click on where you want to go and turn your camera and mic on. The teams from Clause Social and Wales Co-operative Centre will be available. They are there on those networking tables so that you can have a chat with them, ask questions, get further involved. And you can also, of course, continue to connect via email, Social Leaders Cymru, all one word, at wales.coop. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd am bod yma bore yma. I've really enjoyed chairing the panel and finding out more about the project, engaging with you on the chat, the general chat as well. So thank you so much for your comments. Mwynhau'r diwrnod, enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the networking as well for the next half an hour or so. Diolch yn fawr iawn I chi gyd.